Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with this week's playlist. And this has been heavily inspired by my recent appearance on the Sea of Tranquility show with Pete Bardot. And we do a monthly show where we pick 10 tracks that define a guitarist. And they're songs that define a guitarist for us individually, not necessarily if you're looking for a song to show someone who's new to that player. And obviously, if we're doing the research for that show, I've been playing the music to make sure I was picking the songs that really meant that much to me for each particular one. So the 10 albums, for there are 10, are all the ones that feature these particular guitarists. And on this show, it was my turn to choose them. I have to say that the ones that Pete's chosen for episode 4 are going to be quite a challenge in many ways. But these were as well. So the guitarists that I've picked for my 10 albums for my playlist that I've been playing this week have been Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, Carlos Santana, Roy Buchanan, Bob Kulick, Dicky Betts, Jimmy Page, Rick Derringer, Frank Zappa, Tony Iommi and Rob Beach. So and it was interesting doing this because some of the ones I mentioned, I've kind of almost changed my mind because of what Pete said in some ways. And I suppose that's especially true on the first one, which was Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. Because I was thinking of my own entry point to the top, because I actually missed out on a lot of the 70s stuff because I wasn't listening. I think apart from Fandango, perhaps, but I was elsewhere. So I, like a lot of people, I came into ZZ Top with Eliminator. And the tracks on that album that meant the most to me were I Need You Tonight, which is that kind of that blues solo where there's a nice bit of echo on it and reverb. Or it was the obvious one, Give Me Your Loving, with the open guitar chords and riffs and stuff, and the fact of the modern sound, and the fact it was coming out in the era of like 80s rock, metal, etc., that it just fitted in, that they'd managed to pivot and reinvent themselves and become even more popular than they were at the start. But I've changed my mind. Something that Pete said, he mentioned Brown Sugar off the first album, and so I played that, and that's where I've spent my time. And so ZZ Top's first album has been on my CD player, in this case, a lot this week, and it is the second track in, and it really, really is good. I have to also say that the ZZ Top Raw version, which was what's that? What was that? 2022. That version is just as powerful, if not more, actually. And this is a Gibson Les Paul, isn't it, through a small amp, and as with a lot of these things, it sounds like he's sitting next to you while he plays. So that's again, I've been playing both of those. So one from the very start and one for the more recent times. And I would also recommend this little box set, which I've done a separate video for as well. The next one is Carlos Santana, and again, as we said on the show, that this is another guitarist where you hear one note and you know who it is. And this is an album by Carlos Santana from 1987, and it's one that it's a bit of a compilation, and I don't know whether a lot of Carlos Santana fans will recognise it and sort of say it's one of his best, but it is to me, and it's Blues for Salvador. And primarily for the last track, called Blues for Salvador, the last track. I was going to say side 2, but it's a CD. I don't even know if this has ever been on vinyl. But Mingus, How Do You Know, Hannibal, Train, I'm Gone. It's a combination of studio and live tracks, but it's Blues for Salvador, which is just guitar and a bit of kind of ambient sounds behind it. I think it's just a very emotive and beautiful piece of music, and so that's my Carlos Santana album of the week for that. Roy Buchanan is a guitarist I got into when I was very young, actually. I bought a single called Sweet Dreams, and the B-side was John's Blues from 1972 on the Polydor record label. And it's a very rich Telecaster sound, lovely sustain. And as I went through the 70s, I kind of went off Telecaster, so I was kind of associated with kind of teeny sound. But Roy Buchanan managed to get a sound out of the Telecaster which was heartfelt and so emotive. And the album that I've been playing has been the first album from this Tufa CD on the BGO record label. And all the tracks that I love the most are from the first album. The second album's good, but the first one has got Sweet Dreams on it, and John's Blues, and also The Messiah Will Come Again, which is absolutely wonderful spiritual track anyway. But the guitar playing, as I've mentioned in other of my recent videos, must have influenced. Well, in fact, he did a cover. Gary Moore did a cover of this song, and some people have said when I mentioned this, oh, Gary Moore's version was better, without realising actually that it started here. But I also think it influenced Gary Moore on tracks like The Prophet from Back to the Blues. But what makes it so special is the fact that you've got these kind of like very Gary Moore-ish, kind of really spaced out, heartfelt, emotive guitar lines, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get these rapid run, triplet, fast, fiery guitar lines that come out of nowhere, showing that Roy Buchanan could play as fast as anyone if he wanted to. Absolutely great. So if you don't know who Roy Buchanan is, start here, and if you do, no doubt you'll be pointing out other things that we should be listening to. The next one can be a bit decisive without realising it, I guess, depending on how you feel. And this is kind of a heavy metal band, and it's WASP. And I know that one of the comments on Sea Tranquility video was, oh, it's WASP, I'm going to give that a hard miss. And I understand that. And that's because WASP have got this kind of comical, not dated very well image on some of their early artwork, and the way that they position themselves, a lot of people just turned off, which is a shame. Because the Crimson Idol, which is the album, which is one of my favourite albums, and it's so much related to Quadrophenia by The Who in everything about it, really. I mean, you know, Blackie must have listened to that so many times. But it's a track called The Idol from 1992, and Bob Kulick's guitar solo on this track is something that everyone should hear. It is sort of tenuously joined at the hip with Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb, in that it's one of those chord sequences where, as a guitar player, you just go, oh yes, just give me the space and I'll fill it. And Bob fills the space with one of the most beautiful, heart-rendering guitar solos of all time. And Blackie's voice, because he's a great vocalist, fits in with the angst and the heartfelt stuff. The music and the vocals just unite to create something that's so moving that even if you think the subject matter itself, which is like a concept album about a rock star that overindulges and slowly fades away, is like something that you can't relate to, you won't even notice that. You'll just feel the power of the voice and the music. But the guitar solo is just, it's just amazing. So those of you who think don't do WASP, do that song, just play that song, and let me know in the comments, especially those of you who've not heard it before, what do you think about it? You know, what are your thoughts about this track? Because it'd be really interesting to know what you think about it. It really will. Dicky Betts. I picked several songs, several albums I was trying to think of that what I would do for this. And in the end, I wanted to find an album that had In Memory of Elizabeth Reed on it. And because there's other ones I could have picked from Seven Turns or more recent stuff when he's done his kind of Miles Davis jazz fusion-y type music. I mean, Dicky Betts is such a wonderful player. But I wanted to pick something where it was really him. Whereas on the Fillmore, Duane Allman is, although Dicky Betts wrote In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, Duane obviously shines on it. So I wanted to pick a version where it's just Dicky. So I went for the one from Wipe the Windows and Check the Oil, where it is Dicky just on his own. And it's not seen as one of their best live albums. It's a compilation, came out in 1976. I like it. And it's a different version of the Allmans. But I think it's probably my favourite version of In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, and it really lets Dicky plays his bottom off on that. It really is fantastic. But the next album that I've been playing was because I was looking for a track that featured Jimmy Page, and my favourite guitar solo by Jimmy Page is the one from No Quarter from the film The Song Remains the Same. So it has to be the original vinyl version for this, or the first 2 CD version that came out, because the others they've been messed around with, and Jimmy's taking bits out and putting bits in, and he's messed around with it, and there was no need to. It was already perfect. So Song Remains the Same. I've done a separate video on this already, but I've been playing that again, and I think it's just magical. It really, really is. My next guitar choice was Derringer, and this was much harder than I thought, and I picked Jump, Jump, Jump from All American Boy, and really Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo is probably the track where people think of Rick Derringer, but Jump, Jump, Jump has got some great guitar playing on, and this album should be in anyone's collection. It really is a stroke of genius. I think he was trying to be everything from a teenage pin-up pop hero at the time to a guitar hero, and why not? He got everything, the voice, the songwriting chops, and the guitar playing. Absolutely brilliant. So that was my Derringer choice for album. I play that album a lot. The next one was Frank Zappa, and there are so many things I could have picked here, especially because Frank Zappa's done triple albums and double albums just called Guitar or Shut Up and Play Guitar, and it's just guitar solos all knitted together. And of course, his back catalogue is so big and so huge and so vast. Where do you start? Well, sometimes your entry point to an artist always remains that. And I was in Virgin Records in 1976. I used to come home. Where was I working then? I can't remember. But in between getting into Birmingham, coming home from work and catching the bus back to where I lived, there was a bit of downtime while I waited for the bus. And sometimes, because I'd had a long bus journey, I'd go into Virgin Records and just miss the next bus just so I could go through the records and just see if there was anything new maybe I could buy that month, because I didn't buy albums every week. It was about once a month. And this particular time I went in, there was this music playing, and it was just a solo guitar. I couldn't tell if it was live or not, but it was just guitar playing on its own with quite a slow backing. But I'd never heard anything like it. It was like slow, then it was emotional, then it was really fast, and it just seemed to go on for a long time. Whereas again, 1976, guitar solos were basically constrained to songs, but this was something that was obviously just the solo, and I couldn't tell who it was. So I could tell from learning to play the guitar that some of the scales being used didn't sound quite right. And this is the thing about Frank Zappa. In the hands of anyone else, it would sound probably out of tune, but he had a way of using scales that jazz scales with rock scales and blues scales that just worked. And the song was called Black Napkins from Zoo to Lures, which is still my favourite Frank Zappa album. It's the one that has The Torture Never Stops on it, and which was the next track in. Completely, I'd never heard anything like it in my life. But it's just amazing. So for me, Frank Zappa was one of the most inaccessible artists of that time, and this opened a door to a new world to me. And it still sounds great now. Disco Boys, Zoo to Lures, and wind up working at a gas station. Great stuff. The next artist was Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, and having chosen the one I did, and I chose it because it's, to this day, it's the one that sums up his playing the most to me. Pete mentioned other things, especially the Heaven Hell period of Tony Iommi's playing. So I could have picked Lonely as the Word from Heaven and Hell because it's similar to the choice that I made. And it was Technical Ecstasy and You Won't Change Me, also from 1976. I think this has got the classic Tony Iommi descending riff. It's doom-laden, but the lyric written by Geezer for Ozzy to sing about, being pushed up literally up the corner and feeling that, people are trying to change you, but you won't change. You want to be who you are, and you follow your own person, especially 76, I was a teenager, so, wanting to say, no, this is who I am, this is so important. And this feeds into my recent videos on this kind of thing, really. But when Tony Iommi comes in with his guitar solos, of which there are two, the notes just pour out of the speakers like, using one of my favourite kind of sayings, it is literally like a waterfall of notes, but each one of them is completely on target. Each note fits in with the words that Ozzy's sung. So there's a lot of angst and stuff in Ozzy's phrasing, and Tony Iommi just matches that. And it makes me wonder about what modern recording techniques where bands are kind of like dialing it in, where they're all in different parts of the world and they're just kind of like sessioning and doing things. Whereas this, they've been in the same session, they're in the same room, perhaps, or they've been part of the whole creative process, watching it. And Tony Iommi comes in and plays a solo that fits in so well with the lyrical content and the feeling of the music that it's just like bullseye. So that to me shows the blues and emotional feeling of Tony Iommi's playing, but with the kind of literally, it's probably one of the most ferocious and fastest solos also within the context of a song that isn't fast rock song, if you know what I mean. So that was my number 9 choice for the guitarist that I chose. Technical Ecstasy, of course, is one of the greatest Sabbath albums for me. And the last one is by a band called Winger, who I'll be featuring soon again when I review their vinyl and CD box sets. But this is from the latter part of their career, more recent album called Karma, which is also possibly, is it? Yeah. It's my favourite album by Winger. It's got some great tracks on it, Deal with the Devil, Stone Cold Killer, Come a Little Closer, etc. Brilliant riffs, great production. But it's the track called Witness. This album is from 2009, which is, Kip Winger's got such a great voice. He's a great, talented person. He does lots of classical music. Now he can write ballets and all sorts of stuff. And this is one of these songs which is it is a ballad, I suppose, but it's, again, a bit like The Idol by WASP. Although if Kip Winger's watching this, he'll be thinking, how the hell have I linked those two together? But bear with me. It's because it has this kind of chord sequence again, which visits Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd, where the guitarist must think, oh, wow, thanks, Kip. And Rob Beach plays this solo that builds up this song that just builds with such an avalanche of emotional angst and feeling in it, that he just starts playing this solo, which I understand was done in one take. And in a way, I understand that, because this is one of these type of guitar solos where if you tried to do it more than once, you'd lose the emotive feel that you had when you went in to do it. And it just builds into a crescendo of notes that get so fast, and the aggression of the tremolo arm and stuff, that it just almost like disappears into the ether of the universe. It's just an absolutely tremendous piece of work. It really is. And a lot of people will probably look at bands like Winger, perhaps, and think that all these bands were roughly the same, but they weren't. As I say, Rob Beach is a brilliant player. You might know him more from Whitesnake or whatever, but his playing on this is fantastic. But that track, just stream that song, Witness, and let me know what you think. So those are my 10 album choices and select tracks from those albums as part of my kind of tracks that defined a guitarist. And I thought it was worth going into a bit more detail from what I did on Pete's Sea of Tranquility channel, which was absolutely fantastic to be a guest of as well. And as I say, episode 4 will be later in October, and it will be quite a challenging one as well, from looking at Pete's list as well. But thank you for watching, thank you for being here, thank you for subscribing and supporting me. Remember, if you want to see all of my videos before they go public and with some extra stuff as well, then become a patron or a YouTube member. You can also make a donation via the Ko-fi link, which is below this description. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor, so please take care, stay safe, and I shall see you on my next video.